For those who just tuned in to EconoChat, Let's Talk Business with Mr. Daniel Steinman, welcome to you. We are talking about GDP versus revenue. For those who do not know what GDP stands for, it is Gross Domestic Product. Yeah?
GDP?
Yes.
This one you got right. Also, the listeners may ask me, why are you stuck on GDP versus revenue?
Yeah.
And a little bit of that came out in the first part of our talk. It's important to realize that GDP is open to methodology, it's open to definition, it's open to interpretation, it's open to whether you follow the IMF model, World Bank model, the Harvard Business School model. There are various models for defining and calculating GDP.
Yeah.
Not so with revenue. Revenue is a nominal value. Revenue is how much money does the government have in the bank. And it is only so much. It's not open for interpretation. Anybody can go check it. So I like to follow revenue.
Yeah.
And if now you've got in the back of your mind, we are approaching the interim budget. So what is the importance of this? Why am I looking at this? And the reason is the official growth rate for GDP is given as 3.9%. And I've explained in our earlier talks on low base and high base effects why it's coming down every month, every year. But remember I said, if you look at the nominal growth, at the actual values, at the dollar cent values, you see that the economy is bigger every year.
Yeah.
By much more than just 3.9%. Now, this is where it becomes important. If you look at the main budget that was tabled at the end of February, you would notice that the revenue collection of the previous year was about 11.4% more than what was budgeted. And there's a whole host of reasons why this happened. Part of it is tax collection. Part of it is SACU transfers. Part of it is dividends from diamond sales, etc., etc. It's not a single thing. The Namibian economy has become too big to be moved by a single aspect in the economy or in the economic framework. So it's always sort of a mix, But the important thing is we were all a bit surprised when we saw that the actual revenue outcome for the previous year was more than 11% than what we budgeted. Now, the minister being the minister and the ex-governor of the central bank, what did he do? He didn't use that windfall, that bigger revenue income to bring down debt, which is a good thing. He used that windfall immediately to increase the expenditure side by 12%. And now, so obviously there's a correlation between what the government spends and what they get in. So if you increase the expenditure side by 12%, because your revenue in the previous year was a little bit more than 11% higher than what you thought it would be, it means that increased spending must show up somewhere. It can't fall through the cracks, it can't evaporate, can't disappear in thin air. It has to have an effect. Remember, we're talking a country's budget, a national budget. We're talking really very big, serious money. So you can't hide it. You can't neutralize its effect. And this is when I look at revenue for this year, for the current fiscal year, I see that it's budgeted to be 12% more than the previous year, as I said, because of the bigger income, bigger collection in the previous fiscal year. Now, if you look at the official 3.9% growth rate for GDP. But you look at revenue, there where it's really cooking in the kitchen, when the heat is at the stove. And the revenue increase is 12%, and the government's contribution to the economy is let's say in the region of 65%, give or take. Then it is impossible to have a growth rate in GDP of 3.9%. So, and I'm not prepared to speculate what the growth rate would be. It's very speculative. It will remain speculative until the final national accounts only in July next year.
Yeah.
And I'm always fond of reminding students that, first of all, you don't switch off the economic machine. You don't switch off the government one day. Now you start over the next day. It's a continuous thing. The second one is that when you get the final national accounts, it's sort of, I wouldn't say nobody cares, but it is just a confirmation of something that we have already seen in events earlier, before that, And this is why the interim budget is so important, because it provides us, it forces the minister to take a snapshot. He knows he can't stop the economy. He can't stop the government's financial machinery. It has to carry on every day. Can you imagine what happens if you have to tell the 100,000 teachers, sorry, we're not paying this year because we're working budget, So do you, I'm joking, but do you get an idea of how unrealistic it is to think that you can stop the government machinery? It has to carry on all the time. It means also in practice that you have to work on estimates. You have to sort of make clever guesses all the time. Where are we going?
Yes.
And then when you look back, that's the first time when you get a historical or an empirical indication of what have we accomplished or what was the performance. But when you get confirmation for that, it's 6 months after the event. So it is irrelevant in a certain sense other than being academic.
Okay, let's just quickly go for another short break, and once we come back, we will have our last talk.